A 5-year-old boy looked into a live TV camera and whispered, "Jesus loves you, even when you're quiet." The world stopped. Elon Musk sat frozen, stunned, not by a glitch, but by truth. Where did his son learn that? What followed would break hearts, change lives, and leave Elon asking questions science never could. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The New York morning air was crisp as Elon Musk stepped out of the black car, his young son X skipping beside him with a small rocket toy tucked under one arm. They walked through the lobby of the television studio, past bustling producers and camera crews, to the green room where final preparations were being made. Elon was calm, composed, rehearsing stats in his head about the latest breakthroughs in AI, energy systems, and Mars transport. This was supposed to be routine. Another segment, another news cycle. X, meanwhile, clutched his toy and took in the scene around him with wide eyes, captivated by the glow of cameras, the hum of wires, the energy of a place humming with stories. Inside the studio, Elon was mic'd up and led to the stage. The host greeted him warmly, smiling into the camera as the segment opened with the usual blend of energy and small talk. X sat just off to the side, legs dangling from the couch, the toy rocket in his lap. He watched everything with quiet curiosity, occasionally glancing at his father, then back at the glowing lens across the room. 12 minutes into the interview, the host chuckled and turned to X. "Your son's been such a good guest," he said lightly. "Hey, buddy, anything you'd like to say to the folks watching at home?" It was meant to be a charming moment, a bit of lightness. The crew expected a shy shake of the head, maybe a giggle, but X didn't laugh. He sat up straighter, the toy rocket slipping from his hand onto the floor. He looked into the camera, serious, focused, and said, "I want to say something real." The room fell still. Elon turned slowly, eyebrows raised. Something was about to change. The studio lights cast a soft glow across the set as the host turned toward the small boy perched on the couch beside Elon. With a warm smile, he asked casually, "X, is there anything you'd like to say to everyone watching at home?" Everyone expected silence, maybe a playful shrug. But instead, X sat up straight, his tiny fingers letting go of the rocket toy as it clattered to the floor. He looked directly into the camera, calm and clear, and spoke softly but confidently. "Jesus told me, even when I'm quiet, he hears me, and he loves you too." A breathless pause fell across the studio. The host's face froze mid-smile. A producer near the back knocked over a clipboard. Elon's eyes widened as he turned slowly toward his son. He hadn't expected this. No one had. The control room went quiet, save for a few muffled voices asking, "Did he just say Jesus?" The broadcast team hesitated, unsure whether to cut to commercial or keep rolling. Meanwhile, social media lit up. The clip was already being shared, replayed, and quoted within seconds. Elon leaned closer to his son, his voice barely audible. "Where did that come from, buddy?" he whispered. But X only smiled. Backstage, the noise of the studio still echoed faintly through the walls as Elon crouched down in front of his son. The dressing room lights buzzed softly above them. "Buddy," Elon said gently, trying to keep his voice even, "why did you say that just now? On live television?" X looked up with his usual calm innocence. "Because it's true," he said simply. Elon's brow furrowed, trying to make sense of it. "Did someone tell you to say that? A teacher? Someone at school?" X shook his head. "No, it came from my heart." Elon blinked, stunned. "But you've never heard that from me, or your mom, or anyone at home?" He sat back slowly, trying to piece it together. They didn't go to church. There were no Bible stories at bedtime. Their conversations were filled with science, space, inventions, not prayer, not miracles. Yet his son had spoken as if it were the most natural thing in the world. That night, after they returned to their hotel suite, Elon tucked X into bed and sat nearby, watching the rise and fall of his son's breathing. The city lights twinkled outside the window, but Elon barely noticed. His mind kept replaying the moment over and over again. That voice, that certainty. Then, just as Elon stood to leave the room, X stirred. "Daddy?" he whispered. Elon stepped closer. "Yeah, I'm here." X's voice was soft and sleepy. "Jesus told me some people forget they're loved." Elon stood frozen in the doorway. "He told you?" he asked. X nodded slightly, already drifting back into sleep. Elon didn't say another word. He just stood there, his heart pounding with a strange mixture of awe and disbelief, and the quiet realization that this, whatever it was, wasn't something he could explain away. Elon woke up to his phone buzzing nonstop. The screen glowed with messages from colleagues, journalists, board members, and friends. Some praised what happened on live television, calling it refreshing and deeply moving. Others were skeptical, accusing Elon of staging the moment. "A calculated PR stunt," one message read. "Genius brand move," said another. But beneath the praise and criticism, there was confusion. No one knew what to make of a 5-year-old declaring faith in Jesus on national television. Elon scrolled through the messages in silence, then set the phone down and stared out the hotel window. The city moved below, unaware of the emotional storm brewing inside him. The previous night's moment kept playing in his mind. X's voice, calm and sincere, telling the world that Jesus hears him and loves them too. An hour later, a call came in from the crisis team. "Elon, we need to get ahead of this," said Marlene, his PR director. "There's speculation everywhere. We're drafting a statement now. Something that acknowledges the moment without confirming anything. Just enough to settle things down." "No," Elon replied simply. There was a pause on the other end. "No statement at all?" she asked. "I'm not spinning this," he said. "It wasn't PR, it was personal." Marlene sighed. "You realize this is already being politicized, right? Religious groups are claiming it. A few outlets are accusing you of emotional manipulation. It's going global." Elon didn't respond. He stood, walked over to where X was drawing quietly at the table, and watched him for a long moment. The boy's focus was pure, untouched. He wasn't thinking about public relations or media cycles. He was just a kid who believed something in his heart and said it out loud. Elon knelt beside him. "What are you drawing, buddy?" "A rocket going to heaven," X said with a smile. "Jesus is waving." Back online, media outlets were buzzing. Headlines read, "The moment a child silenced a nation." "Elon Musk's son declares divine love." Unexpected words from the world's most rational family. Clips of the moment had gone viral in a dozen languages. Talk shows were analyzing it. Commentators on both sides were debating the implications, and through it all, Elon remained silent. He took a walk later that afternoon, needing air and space. The weight of it all sat heavy on his chest. He didn't know how to make sense of what was happening. For a man who had spent his life in logic and systems, this moment felt like a breach in all his frameworks. And still, in the middle of it, he couldn't ignore the calmness he saw in his son. X hadn't been shaken. He hadn't even asked about the reaction. He had simply told the truth as he saw it. Back at the hotel, Elon returned to the suite and found a handwritten note slipped under the door. It wasn't from press or security. It read simply, "I believe your son's voice was more than a moment. It was a message. If you're open, I'd like to speak with you. Reverend Grace Jenkins." No camera crew, no network affiliation, just an invitation to talk. Elon stared at the note, unsure what to make of it. He looked over at X, now asleep under a blanket on the couch, his drawing resting on his chest. There was something about this note, its quiet simplicity, that felt honest. He slipped the paper into his pocket, sat beside his son, and whispered to himself, "Maybe truth doesn't need to shout." Outside, the media lights still flickered. Inside, something deeper was just beginning. The next morning, the hotel suite was quiet. Elon sat at the breakfast table, untouched coffee cooling in his hand. Across the room, X played quietly with blocks, occasionally humming. The buzz from the outside world hadn't stopped. Messages still poured in, headlines still flashed across the screen. But something inside Elon had shifted. He wasn't thinking like a CEO anymore. He was thinking like a father, still trying to understand what had just happened. Then came a knock on the door. It wasn't another journalist or publicist. Standing there was Reverend Grace Jenkins. No camera crew, no press badge. Just a calm presence and a soft smile. Elon hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in," he said quietly. They sat across from each other at the hotel table. X stayed in the corner, drawing quietly. "I'm not here for a story," she said gently. "I'm here because I believe your son's words weren't random. They were sacred." Elon looked down, conflicted. "We're not religious. We've never even talked about this stuff at home." She nodded. "That's why it matters more. God doesn't always need classrooms or sermons. Sometimes He chooses the heart that's open, the voice that's still unfiltered." Elon shook his head slowly. "I'm not against it. I'm just cautious. I don't want to pressure him, but I don't want to silence him either." Reverend Jenkins smiled, warm and knowing. "Then you're already on the right path. Just listen." They sat in silence for a moment before she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, colorful book. "It's a children's Bible," she said. "It's full of stories, questions, and wonder. Not doctrine, just invitations. Maybe it can sit on a shelf, or maybe he'll open it when he's ready." Elon hesitated, then took the book. Not out of conviction, but out of curiosity. Out of love for the boy who had started this quiet storm. Then, without a word, X stood up and walked over. In his hand was a piece of paper. On it, a simple drawing. Stick figures standing near a man with open arms and a glowing heart. "This is Jesus," X said softly. "He told me to draw it so people remember." Elon stared, his throat tightening. "What do you mean he told you?" X blinked, completely calm. "In my heart. Same place the hug came from." The room went still. Reverend Jenkins brought a hand to her mouth, eyes glistening. Elon sat frozen, staring at his son. He had no answers, but for the first time, he knew he had to follow. The letters didn't stop. Elon's assistant began stacking them in organized piles on the dining room table. Hospital envelopes, military bases, correctional facilities, schools. Elon couldn't process it all at once, but at night, when the house fell quiet, he read them one by one. The first was from a woman named Rebecca, sitting alone in a hospital room. She had stage 4 cancer. Her handwriting was shaky. "I watched the clip of your son," she wrote, "when he said, 'Jesus hears you, even when it's quiet.' Something inside me cracked. I hadn't prayed in 20 years, but in that moment, I did. I wept, and I didn't feel alone anymore." Elon sat still after that, not as a billionaire or an inventor, just a man, staring at a letter from a stranger whose pain had somehow been reached by a 5-year-old's voice. The next letter was from a prisoner named Marcus in Texas. "I've been locked up for 15 years. I've done things I'm not proud of. But that boy, that voice, it reminded me I might still be seen." I got down on my knees in a concrete cell and asked God if he could still hear me. Elon's hands trembled. Another letter came from a teenage girl in Alaska. My parents are divorcing. I was planning to run away. I even packed my bag, but then I saw your son's video and I broke down crying. I stayed. I told my mom I needed help. Please thank your son. He doesn't know it, but he saved me. That night, Elon stood quietly by X's bed. The boy was asleep, mouth slightly open, breathing deep beneath his rocket blanket. One arm dangled off the side like he hadn't just carried the weight of millions. Elon sat on the edge of the bed and whispered into the darkness. How do I protect you when the world wants your heart? How do I guard something so pure when it's already reached so far? There was no answer, just the quiet rhythm of his son's breath. The next morning, they made waffles together in the kitchen. Elon was quiet, distracted, lost in thought as he sipped his coffee and stared out the window. That's when X spoke. "Daddy," he said, without even looking up from his drawing. "Yeah, buddy, I want to make another video." Elon blinked. "Another video?" X nodded, focused on the crayons in front of him. "To tell people again that they're not alone, that Jesus still loves them." His first instinct was to say no. Every part of him wanted to shield his son, to keep the chaos away, to stop the pressure from creeping in. But when he looked at X's face, serious, calm, determined, he saw no fear, just purpose. "You've already said so much," Elon said gently. "I know," X replied, "but people forget. God told me I should help them remember." Elon didn't speak for a moment. The walls he'd spent decades building, walls of logic, data, structure, they didn't collapse, but something inside them softened. He set down his mug. "If we do this," he said slowly, "we do it quietly. No big cameras, just us. Just for the people who really need it." X smiled. "That's perfect." Elon nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Okay, let's do it together." The kitchen was quiet. Morning light spilled across the counter as Elon adjusted the phone stand on the table. There were no bright studio lights, no producers, no script. Just his son, a child, with a voice so small and yet so steady, sitting on a stool in his rocket t-shirt with feet dangling off the edge. X looked at his dad. "Is it ready?" Elon nodded. "Whenever you are, buddy." The boy took a deep breath and looked into the camera. His voice was soft but sure. "Hi," he said. "My name is X. I'm 5. I want to tell you something important." He paused, glancing at Elon, who gave him a small smile of reassurance. "God loves you," X continued. "Even when you don't feel it. Even when it's quiet. Even when you think nobody's listening." Elon swallowed hard, but stayed silent. X wasn't finished. "And if you're sad, or scared, or lonely, Jesus is with you. Always." He gave a tiny smile. "That's all." Elon hit stop on the recording. The kitchen felt like sacred ground. Later that day, Elon uploaded the video from his private account. No hashtags, no promotional push. Just a caption. "From my son's heart to yours." He didn't expect much. Maybe a few hundred views from family, friends, a few kind messages. But by morning, the video had over 2 million views. People weren't just watching, they were responding. Floods of comments poured in. "I haven't prayed in years." "I cried when I heard this." "This saved my life." The messages weren't about Elon. They weren't about fame. They were about something deeper. A moment of stillness that pierced through the noise. Churches shared the video before services. Pediatric hospital wards played it for children recovering in bed. Families sat together, watching and talking about faith for the first time in years. And Elon watched it all unfold in stunned silence. That evening, his phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but something nudged him to pick up. The voice on the other end was older, weathered by time. "Mr. Musk," the man said, "I just wanted to say thank you." "Who is this?" Elon asked gently. "My name is Samuel. I watched your son's video with my grandson. We wept. And we prayed. For the first time in years." Elon stood frozen, the phone to his ear, as the quiet truth hit him. X had become a bridge for hearts ready to remember. A week passed, and Elon made a quiet decision. No more media, no more interviews, no more strangers waiting outside the gates of his son's school. He called the principal personally and withdrew X from public classes. The world could wait. His son came first. He hired 2 private tutors and set up a learning nook in the sunniest room of their home. Maps of the stars on the walls, books about planets, and parables on the shelf. Elon sat in on every lesson, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. Their mornings were filled with science experiments and reading sessions, building model rockets and flipping through pages of the children's Bible Reverend Jenkins had given them. One evening, as the sky dimmed, Elon quietly slipped into the back pew of the same church he'd visited before. No security, no camera flashes, just stillness, candlelight, and the hush of reverence. He didn't sing, he didn't bow, but he listened. And somehow that was enough. Back home, X was already asleep, his little arm hanging over the side of the bed, a drawing tucked under it. Elon pulled it out gently. It was another one of X's creations, stick figures. On one side, a row of people with frowns and bent shoulders. On the other, a giant red heart. And in the middle, a little figure with outstretched arms standing on a bridge. Elon held the paper in both hands. The drawing wasn't polished or perfect, but it said everything. The next morning, he pinned it to the wall in his office. Right above his monitor, where financial reports and Mars colony projections usually demanded his attention. Now, above them all, was a reminder. A bridge, a heart, and a child trying to bring them together. That evening, after brushing X's teeth and reading him a bedtime story about stars, Elon sat at the edge of his bed. He looked at his son, so full of wonder, so unshaken by the world's chaos, and felt something deep stir inside. He reached forward and brushed a strand of hair off X's forehead, then whispered under his breath, "Whatever this is, I'll walk with you." In the silence, Elon finally understood. The most important journey wasn't toward Mars, but toward the heart of a child who believed the world could still be healed. The house had gone quiet. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the hallway clock filled the silence. Elon moved softly down the hallway, his steps slowing as he approached X's room. The light from the hallway spilled across the carpet in a soft, golden line. Inside, X was tucked under his rocket blanket, one arm curled under his cheek. His drawing, the one with the bridge and the heart, was taped gently beside his bed, a nightlight glowing just beneath it. Elon sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. X stirred, blinking his sleepy eyes open. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then, X whispered, "Daddy, do you believe now?" Elon didn't rush to answer. He looked at his son, his small hands, his fearless eyes, the peace that radiated from him even in half-sleep. And then he nodded slowly, placing a hand on X's back. "I believe," Elon said softly, "in love that never lets go." X smiled, then rolled over, his breathing steadying as sleep returned. Elon sat there for a while, watching the rise and fall of his son's chest, listening to the stillness that now filled his home and his heart. Sometimes the brightest light comes from the smallest voice. Sometimes it only takes one child to remind the world of what truly matters. And sometimes believing starts not with answers, but with awe. Subscribe now for more inspiring stories that remind us we are never alone. Not in the quiet, not in the questions, and not in the moments that catch us by surprise. These stories aren't just tales, they're echoes. Echoes of something deeper, something worth remembering,